the author of the preeminent text on Black history in this dispensation of time, it goes by the name of When We Ruled. And as a result of being able to produce that text, this man is known as the Black History Man. He goes by the name of Robin Walker.
Let's get it started, yeah. Let's get it started. Let's get it started, yeah. Let's get it started. Let's get it started, yeah. Let's get it started. Let's get it started, yeah.
Alright, greetings. So why are we here? Who's here to enjoy some good music? Who's here for that? Okay, who's here to have some fun? I know fun's not a word that's usually associated with me, but here it is. And who's here for some intellectual engagement? Who's here for that? Okay, you're in the right place. Okay, now I have to respect the fact that I am entrusted with your education for 1 hour 10 minutes unless I'm shouted down. Is that okay? People happy with that? No one shouted me down yet, so I've got 1 hour 10 minutes. That's how you get yourself more time, you see, you say something like that. Alright, so also special thanks to the Hidden Science Academy. Big up to the scientist Leon Marshall. Big up to the organisers that made this happen. And the big question for you, of course, is, well, what's in it for you? You are going to learn empowering information on Black heritage. You're going to learn detailed content that will expand your mind. You're also going to learn ideas and concepts that, when you understand them, will increase your understanding and enjoyment of music. All right, now, did I just say enjoyment? Now, with enjoyment, you see, there has to be participation. Yes, participation. Yes, participation. Okay, so enjoyment.
Hey!
Okay, so the big question is why am I talking? Why am I? Well, most people know me in one capacity as the Black History Man, and the kind of things I'm known for is this.
His books are so thorough. Get Robin Walker's books.
I am a student of history, so I gotta recommend some history books, especially because it is Black History Month. When We Ruled by Robin Walker. This is one of the dopest books. Like, I promise you, this book is so bomb. It has color pictures in it, but the thing I love most about it, let me find it. It has a chronological order of all of the pharaohs from ancient Kemet. Check this out. This is so dope. I said ancient Kemet. So it has this chronological order of all of the pharaohs, and it goes from the first intermediate period to the Middle Kingdom, second intermediate, it's just all of the dynasties in chronological order of all of the different pharaohs. And then it has color pictures in it, like I said. Really, really dope. So if you are a student of history, make sure you get this book.
Now that's the first time I've ever been described as dope. All right, now, back in the good hair days. Now it's difficult to believe, but I used to have good hair days. It's very difficult to believe. And the big question is who that man? All right, so back in the days then, so this was us in London, 1988, making things happen. And yes, we recorded something. It was called Out of Many, One People, and it sounds like this. Okay, I've also co-written a book partly on black music. The book is called Black British History, and what it deals with is the 70 years of Black Britain, and it's broken down into musical themes. So this is also the book that's partly relevant for today's session. I also have to big up my team. Anyone recognize another member of the team that's here? Vanika Marshall, so she's also got copies, so show her some love. make sure you, in fact we can both sign the book if people want it. And so that's me introducing myself. Have you introduced yourselves to each other? Everyone said hello to the person sitting next to them, the person behind them, and so on. Now the reason why we need to do this is we need to participate, we need to get some group energy. Hello. Okay, so people have met, you've said hello to the person sitting next to you. Okay, so the topics for today. I'm going to be dealing with two topics. The first one is, what is the importance of the drum for communication and expression? And the second topic is, can we identify the foundational rhythmic patterns behind black music? Can we do that? All right, now when we look at black music, the music we're going to be looking at today has 7 patterns underlying it, and the 7 patterns are polyrhythm, clave, swing, Afro-Cuban, even 8, funk, and 4 to the floor. All right, now rules. You feel free to take photographs, and if you want to do it, upload it, Hidden Science Academy, but absolutely no filming. Otherwise, I'm going to have to give you what's called the dog face. You know what dog face is? This is the dog face. All right then. So who can name these instruments? Who can name this? What are these instruments called? Anybody? Anybody in the room? One person in the room. Yes, sir. Congas. Good. Okay. Anyone know what these instruments are? Shekere. So we know what congas are. We know what shekere. Okay. Now, based on that, then we're going to begin the story in Nigeria, and the story begins right here. Okay, who wants to answer some of the questions? What type of music is that? High life. What does it sound like? Sounds like calypso, doesn't it? So that automatically tells us something. Calypso from Trinidad and high life from West Africa is almost the same music. So does that tell us that one music evolves from the other? Does it tell us that? Okay, so the rhythm that the shekere was playing. Did we hear the shekere? It was doing this. Did we hear that? Right, did you also hear what the congas were playing? Now, what made it difficult was that there was a conga player and a talking drum. And because they're both at the same pitch, it's hard to hear one from the other. But one of them was doing this. So what we want to do now, we want to get some rhythm in the house. Does that make sense? Do you think we should get some rhythm in the house? Okay. All right. All right, so this side of the room, this is what we're going to get. Fingertips, yeah, like this. that going? On this side of the room. Okay, now, what we're going to do right now, we're going to add to it. Here's the point. You see, I can't then do the hand stuff as well. Okay, so the main point then is that we've got two rhythms going. Does that make sense? What we're going to do now is to increase it to 3. So how would we do? One way of doing it would be. Does that make sense? So we're going to get that. All right then. What I want then is the people at the back. This is what the people will be at the back.
Robbie.
What do you do that the first time? Right, can people hear me? Yeah. Okay, let's all get from people at the back. Thanks a lot. Now what you've just done there is what's called polyrhythm. And polyrhythm, poly means many rhythms happening at once. And this is the basis of African music. Polyrhythm is also the basis of black diasporan music, with one exception. The one exception is music from the United States. All the other black diasporan musics are polyrhythmic. And we're going to explain why that difference is and what difference it makes. All right then, so this is what a musician had to say. Anyone know who this is? Right, this is what Diddley had to say. Mama rhythm is Africa. Africa's children in the Western Hemisphere use different means of expressing their closeness to Mama. The Brazilian Africans created the samba. The West Indians created the calypso, the Cubans created the rumba, and various other rhythms, and my own African American is blues and spirituals, says Dizzy Gillespie. All right, so who can name these instruments? Okay, so we all know that's a double bass? Okay, what's these instruments? The maracas. Okay. All right, so as we're listening, we now know what double bass is, we now know what maracas are. You have to admit that was the sickest, wasn't it? Okay, so what you had then with the maracas got a pattern that went like this. Right, this group, fingertips. And then you had the bass player doing this. You got that? Alright, so this is how I want to change it. Alright, this is how I want to do it right now. Same thing. I want you guys to have this kind of thing happening. Yes? Except you guys, instead of doing it this way, do it on the feet. Got that? Now what I want you guys to do. 2 beats on the foot, 1 foot. Question. What groove is that? Dancehall.
I am it.
That's dancehall.
Yeah.
So can you see then the relationship between Afro-Cuban and dancehall? Okay, now the maracas pattern. What then happened was African Americans swung it and it went from to this. Do you see?
Go on, Robin. Go on. Go on.
All right then. All right, now the general importance of Afro-Cuban music is Afro-Cuban music is the most African music in the Western Hemisphere. So Afro-Cuban music is the most important from our perspective because it's preserved the most of the rhythmic sophistication from Africa. All right, now what affected African American music? Can you see that's the front cover of a Wynton Marsalis album?
Yeah.
And the front cover is called Black Codes from the Underground. Most people don't know what the Black Codes are. Black Codes, English, Code Noir, French. Code Noir. What the Black Codes were about was suppressing African culture among African Americans. And one of the ways it was done was to suppress the drum. Once the drum was suppressed, the drum disappeared from African American music. And then the rhythmic sophistication, the polyrhythmic sophistication, also disappeared from African American music. So how did African Americans respond? Well, we're going to deal with that. What is the importance of the drum? Why was it suppressed? We're going to deal with that too. So what I'm going to do right now is, I'm going to leave you in the capable hands of Gus Casey Hayford, and he's going to explain the importance of the drums in the African context, and he's going to look at the empire of Ashanti on a model map that's Ghana, and he's going to explain the importance of the drums.
These are the atom pan drums, the talking drums of Asante. They're a means of communication, but perhaps not in the way you might imagine.
These drums don't just beat out a rhythm, they speak. And if you know the language, you can hear words and phrases.
That was great. Thank you so much. It's just amazing. And just to hear, you don't just hear it, you feel it. It's absolutely wonderful. So each one of these drums have a different sound, a different function. Is that right?
Yes, it is. To get an idea of drum language, I've come to speak to drum maker James Chompong.
And these drums speak, is that right?
Yes.
How do they actually communicate? I'm fascinated by that.
There are certain basic drum language which is very familiar to anybody within the community. Such like maybe we are going to war, someone have lost at the forest, and yeah, we are going to communal labor. The king is calling, everyone have to come report at the palace. That's the basic thing. Everyone within the community knows that.
Drum language is possible because it doesn't simply imitate the syllables of spoken words, but their own as well, thanks to the combinations of sounds the drums can produce.
I see. So together, that they make a full sound. You can call me.
Yeah.
My name is Gus. How would you do that? How would you call me? Amateur. I'm not. I don't. I apologise for my stupidity, but I can't see the relationship. Do Gus again. No. Do Gus again, please. Do Gus.
Come.
The talking drum in the olden days was the only means to communicate from a village to other village. So there was no telephone then. So normally the community used the talking drum to send messages from village to other village.
So that's the great Asante saying, isn't it? Asante Kotoko. So that one saying, when you kill 1,000, 1,000 will come.
The common language of the region made this form of communication extremely effective.
So the big question now is if you're an African in America, the Code Noir has been passed and they suppress the drums. What are you going to do in response?
The Juba dance was born from enslaved Africans' experience on the plantation. Brought to the Americas stripped of a common spoken language, this dance was a way for enslaved Africans to remember where they're from. It may have looked something like this. Slapping thighs, shuffling feet, and patting hands. This was how they got around the slave owner's ban on drumming. Improvising complex rhythms, just like ancestors did with drums in Haiti or in the Yoruba communities of West Africa. It was about keeping cultural traditions alive and retaining a sense of inner freedom under captivity.
And then the next development was Baby Dodds. Baby Dodds is a very, very important musician because he's the first great African-American drummer. He was active in the music game 1910s, 1920s, and he is the first great African-American drummer. So the big question now is, well, what did he bring to the table?
Everything from African heritage was drums. This is a North African drum, and the interesting thing about it, it has strings on it to make it sort of sizzle when you play it. I'm going to show you a couple of typical African rhythms that came to New Orleans and were played by famous New Orleans drummer Baby Dodds on the bass drum rim with two sticks playing the same beat together. Why? Because they would have a row of drummers. So they wanted to hear the two different sounds at once rather than just one guy playing. So they were looking for that sound, and that's how they got it. And this is a typical beat from Northwest Africa that came to America. Another pattern that Baby Dodds used was this one.
So which musicians did Baby Dodds work with? Anyone recognize any of these people? Young man at the front with the slide trumpet. Louis Daniel Armstrong. So whoever said Satchmo, big up, you said that. Yeah, take a bow. Take a bow. Okay, so This is the ensemble of the great king of jazz. He's the person at the top with the trumpet, and he's got the mute in the end. That's King Oliver. And King Oliver is the great king of jazz. And then on the floor in front is his student, Louis Armstrong. The woman at the piano is the person that's going to become Louis Armstrong's wife. So they made it happen. And then a generation after this, we then get Chick Webb, who then is one of the first swing drummers. And he worked with musicians such as, anyone know who that is? Ella Fitzgerald, First Lady of Swing. Let me explain the relationship. Chick Webb led his orchestra. He then recruited Ella Fitzgerald. And when Chick Webb died, Ella Fitzgerald took over his orchestra, and it then became the Ella Fitzgerald Orchestra. She became the First Lady of Swing. Another musician that Chick Webb trained up was an Afro-Cuban musician called Mario Basie, and he's an important person in our story. After this, by the time we get to the mid-30s, the great drummer was Papa Joe Jones. And he was the hardest swinging drummer from the time period. And he worked with the great Count Basie. And so we're going to get them in action, African American swing. Okay, so let's get some rhythm happening in this place. Okay, you guys, the simple bit, just fall on the slice, like that. And you guys finger taps. That's basically the basis of swing. Now, with you guys, if you were to do this, and then put it on the feet, it then becomes. What's that the basis of? This is the basis of fall to the floor. You see, fall to the floor is basically that same bass line, put on the drums, it becomes fall to the floor. All right, now the importance of the Count Basie Orchestra is Count Basie is the real king of swing. I know that there's some people who have been taught some stuff about Benny Goodman or some other nonsense. The real king of swing is Count Basie. And his orchestra, I mean, they blew up in the 30s, and they were still swinging right up until the end of Count Basie's life. Now, the main difference between what you've just heard and Afro-Cuban rhythm is, with swing the rhythm is, get it? Yeah? Okay then. Now who can name this instrument? clave. Right, the clave, two sticks hit together. Okay, so we're now going to listen to the traditional music of Jamaica. It's called mento. Check this out.
Lord, what a night and a vibe, what a Saturday night. Lord, what a night and a vibe, what a Saturday night. Everybody up, feel up, not a party oneself. Everybody up, feel up, not a party oneself. Lord, what a night and a vibe, what a Saturday night. Lord, what a night and a vibe, what a Saturday night.
Now, we've heard a bit of this before. We've heard that before, right? Now, can you see that all they've done is, right, as a group, let's all do it. Thanks, that's the clave beat. Now that beat, we're going to hear it as we go through the presentation. All right, now the importance is that this is what it looks like musically. The second one, song clave 3/2, is what you've just played. Does that make sense? All right, so what I'm going to do is get some people doing it, and we're going to add some more of the rhythms. Does that make sense? So you guys, this is what I want. Slow it down. You guys, it's all right now. Let's do you guys first. Let's do this. Get it? Thanks. All right, now, the main point here is these rhythms are very, very important because we're going to hear those same rhythms in other forms of music. Okay, now, our next thing that I want to talk about is the birth of rock and roll. Now, there's some theory going around, something to do with Bill Haley and the Comets, or Elvis Presley, or Jerry Lee Lewis, or Carl Perkins. Okay. The real fathers of rock and roll, I'm going to introduce you to two of them today. But one of them is this gentleman, Diddley. And you've already done the clave. So now that you've heard what the clave sounds like, check this out. Exactly the clave, but it's been decorated. The clave is, in fact, half of you guys, let's get that going. Half of you guys. Now this is what Basie done at acting plays. So you can see it's the clave that's been decorated. Do you see? All right, now, the importance of Bo Diddley is that his guitar style and the kind of licks he played on the guitar was to become rock and roll mainstays. So when it comes to rock and roll guitar, everyone has got Bo Diddley in their sights. All right, so what do we make of this? Should we call this borrowing, appropriation, or development? British R&B. Can you hear us? An absolute copy. Yeah. And whole careers were made doing that. All right, now I'm seeing people are sleeping, so it's stretch time. Right, everyone needs to get up. Okay, so stretch time is like this. Okay, so it's this way. Stretch this way. Good. Stretch this way. Good. It's to the back like this. Good. It's to the front like this, and then up again. Right, thanks a lot. Okay, our next development is Afro-Cuban Jazz. Did I mention a musician called Mario Balzar? Did I mention him? Having worked with Chick Webb, he then went back to Cuba, recruited some Afro-Cubans, and they were then going to revolutionize Cuban music with something called Afro-Cuban Jazz, and it sounds like this. Okay, now because of the speed, I'm not going to get you guys to clap at the speed. So we're going to slow it down. So the speed was actually... So we're going to slow it right down. So we're going to get it down to... Yes, we're going to get it like that. Which for you guys means even eighths. Think I'm going? For you guys, this is it. Alright, now we're going to simplify it. One clap each. Keep that going. Alright, big question. What groove is that? What you've just done, what groove is this? It's not Afro-Cuban anymore, it's become an African-American groove. It has become boogie woogie. And boogie woogie is the basis, the other basis of rock and roll. I know people don't believe me, but we're going to deal with that. Okay. Now, the main point then is the Afro-Cuban groove is the basis of the African-American even 8 grooves. What you've been doing, this tapping, you've been doing 8 per bar. And the fact that they're equal lengths gives you that even 8. Does that make sense? And then when you guys were clapping, that's the basis of boogie woogie. All right, now, Franz Machito and the Afro-Cuban Jazz Orchestra, their importance to music is they were the original mambo kings. So when people talk about mambo, so-called salsa, these are all politically correct ways of not saying Afro-Cuban. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right then, so let's hear some boogie woogie. You thought I was talking gas, innit? Okay, so the rhythm's based on this. This is even 8. So we've got that 8 pattern, it's even, and then we've got the and then that's now the basis of rock and roll. So you can see then that the has become. You get it? Okay, now the even 8 pattern is the basis of pop music since that time period. Does that make sense? Pop music since that time period has been on the even 8 pattern. All right then, so African American soul. Does anyone know who started soul music?
It's Ray Charles, isn't it?
Ray Charles. And he sounded like this.
Now this band's gonna play rock 91. Everybody is gonna have some fun doing the mess around.
Come down.
They're doing the mess around. Everybody doing the mess around. Now you see that girl with that diamond ring. She knows how to shake that thing, mess around. She can mess around. Mess around. Everybody do the mess around. Now we got some.
So basically what he did was take the even 8, which is this, and then emphasize every second beat. The second beat, the fourth. Does that make sense? The second, the fourth, the sixth, and we got this. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I'd like people to do on this side, people to clap. Get that? Let's do that. And then you guys, this is what I want.
Hallelujah, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Which of course is the gospel groove. Now we're going to slow it down. Instead of you guys doing this, you're going to do this. And what you guys are going to do, alright, anyone know what groove is that? Who said that? Correct, it's ska. Alright, people don't believe me, we're going to prove it. Alright, now, the importance of Ray Charles. He is the father of soul music. And then what happened is that heads in Jamaica listened to Ray Charles, and they took what you've just heard, and they turned it into this.
Not everybody can do the twist, but everybody can do the ska. It's when you dance you can't resist. Ska, ska, ska. Jamaican ska. Now everybody can do the ska. It's when you dance that goes like this. Now, bow your head. Swing your arms, shake your hips. Now do a dip. Jamaica,
hear then that ska is a derivative of African American folk?
Yeah.
All right, now, what youth subculture did ska influence? In fact, it wasn't just one, it was two youth subcultures. The skinheads and who else? The mods. And so, a lot of people have this idea that the skinhead movement is a neo-Nazi movement. That's what some idiots turned it into. But originally, they were pro-black. And they were used to listening to Studio One, Trojan. That's what they were on back in the day. All right then, African American funk.
I am it.
All right, so who do you think we should be playing? James Brown.
Only one. No, God, I think very much.
Okay, so we're going to get some of that. Does that make sense? Okay, what I want then is the people at the front of this side. Does that make sense? The people at the front of this side, I want. Alright, people at the back, I want on the foot. One. On the foot. Very impressive. That was very impressive. Okay, so for those people that don't know, the reason, what made funk important is the thing you guys did on the foot, the one. That's important. That's what anchors funk music, on the one.
On the one.
Does that make sense? And then you heard that James Brown's drummer was bashing up the clave. The horns were coming with the clave pattern. The guitarist was coming with something else. And that's what made funk polyrhythmic. So funk was the first polyrhythmic African American music. And that's the reason why it's been so well sampled. Because people can feel it. In other words, it's got a lot of the African elements reintroduced. You see. And the importance of James Brown, of course, he is Mr. Soul Man, Mr. Funk Man, the original disco man.
Soul Brother number one.
There it is, the Soul Brother number one. Right now I'm going to play you a different group of white musicians, but this time I think we can excuse them for appropriation because they've actually done something with it. Now the musicians you're going to hear are going to play one of the early punk tunes, but you can tell they've been listening to James Brown, they've been listening to the African clave, they've been listening to the claps on the 2 and 4, they've been listening to the Bo Diddley beat. And all of that is going to come together and it sounds like this. rhythms that have been combined to produce something. So that, for me, I think these groups, they're known as Iggy Pop and the Stooges. I think they've just got around appropriation, because they can say they brought something new to the table, which then became punk rock. All right, African American house.
But without Marshall Jefferson, house wouldn't have Move Your Body.
Everybody said it wasn't house music when I first did it. That piano, what the hell is that doing there? You know, who you think you are, Fast Domino? Yeah, you don't put no piano on no house record. That ain't house music. So I call it the house music anthem.
The response to the house music national anthem, Move Your Body, was just international.
I equate the record to like Bill Haley and the Comets, Rock Around the Clock, right? Rock and roll was before that song, but that name, that gave everybody the name.
House had a sound. It had a name. By 1986, it was.
When I went to London, it was all over the radio, all the clubs. I said, this scene reminds me of Chicago.
So you can hear then that if we take the swing groove on the double bass, which is this, and then slow it down, and then put it on the bass, that's basically house. Yeah? And then what then happened is house, it starts in America, starts in the African American areas of places like Chicago. We then get house, and then arrival music grows up in Detroit, which is called techno. And it then spread across Europe, and in Europe at one time that stuff was being called Balearic beats, as if people in the Balearic Islands had anything to do with inception. All right, now what global impact did 4 to the 4 have? Basically, dance music is based on it, but Europeans love it. So the big question now is, why is it that Europeans love 4 to the 4?
It's easy
Now, here's the thing. What we're going to do then is we're going to give some Europeans music that is non-4 to the 4, and you're going to see what they're going to do with it. Does that make sense? And if you can see what they're going to do with non-4 to the 4, you can work out why Europeans like 4 to the 4. Can you see?
Nighty night. Don't let our Brexit dance-a-thon bite. Yes, we're promising not to stop dancing until we leave. Ram Jam, run the rhythm selector.
When two sounds goes to war, only Radigan gonna wear the crown. What you say? You better what you say. So boy, Radigan not in on the fuck.
Alright, I know everyone here is thinking, and I was thinking that too. That's what you're all thinking. Alright then, Jamaican Dancehall. As we're going to hear, dancehall has got some very interesting rhythmic patterns that are ancestral. So check this out, y'all. Alright, so can you hear then that the beat that we started with, which was this, all that they did was put the first beat on the foot, so it became. So let's get this going. Basically the dancehall beat. All right, now let's review what we've done today. All right, so we've talked about the importance of the drum for communication and expression. We've traced the evolution of rhythm, and that's me coming to the end of my thing. So, if you want more information, there is a course that I am running in Croydon, and it's called The Roots of Black Music from Ancient Africa to Grime. 5-week evening course starting Wednesday the 31st of July. It's going for £50 at Croydon. We have a centre called the Croydon Supplementary Education Project. So it's Wednesday evenings, 6:30 till 9. If you want tickets, go on to Eventbrite, and it's called Roots of Black Music. You can get your tickets there. So those of you that are got smartphones. And the 5 classes, we're going to be looking at black women and the evolution of music, the roots of black music from ancient Africa to jazz, the roots of black music from rock and roll to grime, the origin and evolution of modern jazz from Dizzy Gillespie to Miles Davis, and then the origin and evolution of modern jazz from Art Blakey to Wynton Marsalis. So that's called The Roots of Black Music. And there's also a book that we have. This was partly written by me, partly written by Vanika. And the book is called Black British History. And the kind of things that we've done in the book, we've looked at the Calypso years, the Skia years, the Rocksteady years, the Reggae years, the Lovers Rock years, the Two-Tone years. And we've continued the story with the Black British Soul years and the Garage and Grime years. School students have told me, sir, it's not pronounced garage, it's pronounced garage. So if people want that, I'm in the one of the rooms outside. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Oh no! Man, what is the turn up for the presentation? Anyway, what is the turn up for the presentation? What is the close anyway? Sure. Yeah. Regina, enjoy that? You sure? I told you the man's big, large, Ghana Road, intergalactic, international. Yes, family, Robin Walker is a G. You know what I mean? And one of the things that he didn't mention, is anybody familiar with Courtney Pine? Yeah? Courtney Pine, one of his trombonists in the early days was Robin Walker. No joke business, yeah? There's an album by the name of Out of Many by the Jazz Warriors. You directly hear Robin Walker playing on that album, yeah? And in fact, sorry for another time, but Robin Walker kind of got his start through that journey of playing for Courtney Pine. Yeah, so the man is just multi-talented and just brilliant and good looking. We got Reverend Walker, we got Reverend Walker once again.